Hello everyone, welcome to Jolly Molly TV. Today we're going to work on another section in Kimberbell's Quilting Through the Seasons ladder quilt project. Today we're going to be doing filler blocks number 1 through 5. And what they mean by filler blocks is something like up here and like here that are blocks that fill in different sections of the quilt in between some of the machine embroidered blocks. So we're going to be applying quilting designs to 5 of these filler blocks today. So let's go ahead and head over to the machine and let's get started. I also want to give a huge shout out. Again, thank you so much to My Girlfriend's Quilt Shop for sponsoring me and sending me the CD, the embellishments, and the fabric kit in order so that I can show you how to make this project. If you still need some of these supplies for this project, please visit My Girlfriend's Quilt Shop using the link down below and help me give them a big thanks for supporting me and enabling me to make this video series for you. Huge thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, My Girlfriend's Quilt Shop. Okay, we're at the machine. And for the first filler block that we're going to do, we're going to be using a 4x4 hoop. Okay, so I've got my hoop loaded with a piece of the poly no-show mesh stabilizer, and I have a good amount of bobbin thread down below. So I'm going to put that hoop on my machine, and let's go to the screen cam and let's pick the design that we're going to work on today. All right, so the first thing I need to do is wake my dream machine up. If you have something similar, you can follow along. And I'm going to click embroidery. And I'm going to look at my instructions on page 52 because we have a total of 10 filler blocks that we're going to be doing. In this video, we're going to be doing number 1 through number 5. So I want to look at number 3. Number 3 is a KDQ 288 stars block, and it's a 4x4 design, and that's what we're going to load. So I'm going to go to my flash drive because I keep all my files on a flash drive. Going to go to my Quilting Through the Seasons folder and my Quilting Designs folder. So I want to click on my stars folder, and we're looking for a 4x4 design. Here it is right here, KDQ 288 4x4. That's going to be fun to stitch out. I like that. Okay, so we're going to click set. And we don't need to do anything because it's going to bring it in centered, which is what we want. So we just click embroidery. Oh, and it wants me to go to a larger embroidery frame. And why is that? Because I'm looking up here, and even though this is a 4x4 design, it measures 4.5 by 4.5. So guess what? We have to switch to a 5x7 hoop. Okay, not a problem. We can use this stabilizer for something else. So I'm going to go back to the hoop cam, and I'm going to take off my 4x4 hoop, and I'm going to switch it out for a 5x7. Okay. See, we learn as we go. I love it how the machine tells you, switch to a larger hoop. Okay, so now I've got my 5x7 filled as well with the poly no-show mesh. And I'm going to put that hoop on the machine. So now let's go back to the screen cam and let's see if it's happy. If I click embroidery, it's happy. Okay, so even though it's labeled a 4x4, because of the seam allowance, you have to go up to the larger hoop. Okie doke. I also want to give another thank you to another sponsor in this video, Kimberbell, for providing me with the quilting designs to be able to make this project absolutely amazing using their block by block quilting designs. Thank you so much, Kimberbell. And if you're interested in getting these quilting designs, please use the link in the description below and it'll take you right to it, and you can choose the bundle of the quilting designs, or you can also just get individual designs if you like it all florals or all sayings, which I believe they call time. You can choose which designs you want to put in your project. So please check out the link down below for kimberbell.com. So let's go back to the hoop cam. So now I want you to get your plastic pouch or bag that's labeled number 67 and filler blocks. And these are the fabrics that we're going to be working on in this video and the next video. So go ahead and pull all of these out. There we go. Okay. And you can fuse the back of these if you want. You don't have to, only because we're doing quilting designs. We're not doing dense machine embroidery designs where the fabric is going to pucker a lot. With just a gentle quilting, it should be fine without having to do the fusible on the back, but you can if you like. All right. So number 3, which is the star block, we need a square, which is this one right here, gray with the polka dots. Okay, so that's the one we want. So go ahead and put all the rest of these aside for now, up there where they're safe. Okay, so this is the one I'm looking for. All right, so I'm going to put this one right by the machine. So now I want to actually bring that back for a second. I want to match the thread, because the thread that we're going to be doing on this block and the quilting, I want it to blend in. So I'm going to look for a gray or a dark gray. Ooh, I think that one's better. That would look good with this. See, this one is a little darker. This one's a little lighter, but it's going to blend in better. So I'm going to choose this dark gray thread. And I'm going to put this thread up on the machine now so I can stitch out all of the placement line, the batting, the tack down, and the quilting all in the same color thread. All right, so pick your thread of choice, put it in the top of your machine, and then I'm going to set this fabric aside right by the machine. Okay, so let's put the foot down and let's stitch out the placement line for the batting. Here we go. Okay, so now that we've got the placement line, now I'm going to grab a piece of my batting and I'm going to lay it down. And this is pretty big, so I don't have any really worry about covering, but make sure that you've covered the placement line on both sides and top and the bottom. Okay, and then we're going to use the stylus to hold it down, or you can tape it down if you like. But I find that tape and the batting doesn't really have a good reaction. It doesn't hold that well. So I usually just use my stylus to tack it down. All right, so let's put the foot down and let's tack down the batting. Here we go. Perfect. So now I want you to take the hoop off the machine and go to a table and trim away the excess batting from the outside of the block here, because we don't want this to be in our seam allowance, and I'll meet you right back here. Okay, so we've trimmed that up nicely. Let's put the hoop back on the machine, and now let's stitch out the placement line for the fabric. Here we go. Okay, so now we're going to lay down the fabric, and mine has a little bit of the salvage edge on the bottom, so I want to make sure that I don't get that in my block. And just make sure that you've got everything covered, and you can feel for the batting to make sure that you have both sides all taken care of, left and right and top and bottom. Okay, so let's put a foot down, and I still have the dark gray thread up on the top. You don't have to change it out for this one. And let's tack down the fabric. Perfect. Now I'm going to do the quilting in the same color as I have up on top because I want it to match and to kind of blend in with this fabric. So let's put the foot down and let's stitch out the quilting. It's a 3-minute stitch out in real life. All right, sit back and enjoy. Here we go. Very nice. I really like how that design's stitched out. That's cool. All right, so now I want you to take the hoop off the machine and take this block out of the hoop and just set it aside. We're going to keep stitching out the remaining 4 blocks in this video, and then we're going to trim everything up all at once. So let's get to work on the next block. We're going to be needing an 8 by 8 inch hoop, or whatever hoop size you have that's the next largest after the 5 by 7. The design that we're going to load is a 1 by 7, actually it's going to be a 2 by 7 design. I'll talk to you about that in a second. But it's going to be 7.5 inches long. So it's not going to fit in our 5 by 7 hoop. So you need your next largest size hoop. And for me, that is an 8 by 8 inch hoop. Okay, I've loaded it with another piece of that poly no-show mesh. And now let's go to the screen cam and let's load the design. It's going to be a little bit different. Okay, so first of all, I need to click OK, and I need to have that embroidery frame move, and then I'm going to clear the machine's memory. And the easiest on my machine is just to go home. OK to delete the selected pattern, and I say OK. So now I'm going to go to embroidery, going to go back to my flash drive, going to go back to Quilting Through the Seasons, and go back to the quilting design. And if you look on page 52, I'm looking at doing the filler block number 4 and number 5. And you're saying, wait a minute, we're going to do 2? Yes, I'm going to show you a trick to do 2 blocks at once. Now, if your machine can't do this, just preface this, it's okay. You're going to just continue to stitch out 1 at a time. If your machine can do what I'm about to show you, it'll save you a little bit on your stabilizer. Okay, so we're looking for the floral design that's a 1 by 7. So I'm going to click on floral. And the first thing you're going to say is, wait, there is not a 1 by 7 design, and there isn't. Okay, these are considered border files. And what's going to happen is we're going to have to select either a 2 by 6 or a 2 by 8 to stitch out on these filler blocks. And what's going to happen is the stitching is actually going to go outside potentially of the fabric. And then when we trim it up, we will lose some of the quilting. And that's okay, because the block itself, I think these are going to be lined up to be 1.5 inches wide when we're done. So we have an option. First option I'm going to show you is a 2 by 6. This is a little bit shorter of a stitch out, so you would have empty space on each end. Okay, because the design that we want to do is a 7 inch. So that's one option if you don't mind having a little bit space on the top. Click cancel. I'm going to go back to the 2 by 8. Okay, this will actually stitch off the edge of the fabric on all sides, but we have a lot more quilting, I think, in this block, design-wise, that if some of it's cut off, you're still going to have a very nice quilting zone. Okay, so I'm going to use this 8 inch right here, and you're all automatically saying, well, wait a minute, it's not going to fit in my 8 inch by 8 inch hoop. That's correct. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to shrink this design just a little bit, get it down to 8. We'll get more of the quilting design in our block and won't have to cut off as much. Okay, so I'm going to click set, and I'm going to move this block just with my stylus right about there. That looks good. And mind you, if you can't do this on your machine, don't worry. You're just going to pick either your 6-inch or your 8-inch design, whichever one you like, and put it in a hoop on your machine that will fit that, and stitch one at a time. All right. This is just a little benefit if you're able to do multiple blocks on your machine. This is how you do it. So now I want to shrink this design since I'm sitting on it. So I want to click edit, and I'm going to click size. I just want to shrink this up and down. I want it to stitch the way it's going to stitch sideways, but I can shrink it up and down to fit in this hoop. And if you look here, here's an up and down button. I'm going to click on that, and it's slowly shrinking. 7.99, I want to go a little bit there. I want to be a little bit under these lines so it'll fit in my hoop nicely. And then I can see I got a little bit of room, top and bottom, so I can just move it with my stylus and center it. So now it's 7.65 by 2.5. All right, that looks good. So let's click edit and get that screen gone, and click edit again to get that screen gone. Now I'm going to add a second design. Click add. You know where I'm going. Flash drive, Quilting Through the Seasons, Quilting Designs, Floral. And I'm going to pick that 2 by 8-inch design again. Click set. It brought it in. I'm going to grab it with my stylus, and I'm going to move it over to the right. See this? So now I'm actually going to stitch the 2 blocks in one hooping. Guess what? We got to shrink this down a little bit. I'm going to click edit, going to click size, and I'm going to do the top and bottom shrinkage one more time and get it down so it is underneath that 8-inch. Now if you went to 7.99, okay, got to go back up. It's probably going to tell you to switch hoops because I can tell that line is outside of the hoop line. So I just go to it and I go one smaller to give it a cushion and to make sure that it is going to fit and it matches the one on the left. Click edit to clear that screen. Click edit to clear that screen. And look at that. We have now placed 2 of these designs in one hooping. So all we have to do is click embroidery. And it likes it. It's going to fit in that hoop. How about that? Isn't that cool? All right, so let's go to the hoop cam and let's work on stitching this out. Okay, we're back at the hoop cam. And the fabric that I want you to pull for this block are these 2 pieces. It's a beige with the flowers if you have the kit, and a green with the flowers. Okay, so it doesn't matter which block you do first because they're both the same. They're both going to have the same quilting and be the same size. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll be putting my ivory, or kind of it's actually more like a cream, on the left. So I've picked a thread for that. And then I need a light green. That would be pretty. Let's puddle this one. I mean by puddle, just take some thread off and take a look at that. Maybe not. Let's do a little bit different green here. A little bit lighter. And then you just kind of pull some of the thread to see what the quilting will look like. I like that one better. All right, so I've pulled my color thread that I want for the 2 fabrics, and I'm going to put the first one up at the top, which, let's do the beige, or I think it's called taupe. Let's put this up above. So pick your thread of choice and load it in your machine. All right. And I'm going to put this green one aside. I'm going to put this one aside as well. All right. So the first thing it's going to do is it's going to, let me get the loop out. And now it's going to stitch the placement line for the batting. Here we go. Okay, I've got a little piece of scrap here, which will work. Yes, it will, because it's just wide enough. All right, so there we go. So I'm going to use my stylus, put the foot down, and tack down your batting. Here we go. Okay, so now what I want you to do is take the hoop off the machine, and we're going to trim away the excess batting from around this block. Here we go. Okay, so I've got the batting trimmed up, and now I'm going to explain to you something. The fabric that we cut for these blocks is going to be smaller than this, and I'm aware of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to position this fabric toward the top. You can see it just fits because this block is actually going to be smaller. But then I'm going to be able to get the flower here and some of the smaller flowers here. And then the rest of it will stitch on the batting and will get cut off. Okay. So when you have a block that Kimberbell shows a different size for, and they tell you with the little asterisks and instructions that the quilting can stitch off of it, that's what'll happen, and that's okay because we're going to cut it to fit. I just want to maximize the amount of quilting I can get on this block for visual because I want it to show. I want the quilt to have more quilting on it, which is why I chose the 8-inch design over the 6-inch. Okay, but I'm going to place the fabric up here on top after we stitch the next one, which is going to be the placement line. It'll just stitch it out, but that's where I'm going to place my fabric, and that's the reason why is I want the quilting to be more visible on the quilt, which is why I chose this larger design. Makes sense? Okay, so let's whoops, look what I have on top. I have my stabilizer caught around the foot. So this is excess stabilizer from the outside edge, so I'm going to trim it to free this up. Once in a while that happens, okay? And then I'm going to get it out of the needle. Don't pull because then you're going to bend your needle. All right, I'm just going to trim it off the front. I'm freeing it here. Oh, it's still in the needle. Okay, so the back side is free, and now I just have this little bitty piece get from the bottom edge. There we go. Yeah, you don't ever want to pull because that will bend your needle. Okay, so does that make sense? So let's stitch out the placement line and it'll make more sense as we do this block. All right, here we go. Okay, and this is not even going to tack down because the fabric is not as wide as that tack down stitch. So I am just going to place this on top of the batting, and that's where it's going to stitch this design out. And mind you, when it quilts, it's going to quilt all the way down here, and then it will quilt off onto the batting. That's okay, because again, we're going to be cutting this block shorter and actually shorter on the width side as well. So I just want to get this centered so that the majority of the quilting is centered in this block. All right, so let's go ahead and put the foot down. I'm just going to hold it with my stylus as it goes so it doesn't move. And let's stitch out the quilting. It's a 2-minute in real life stitch out, and I've left the taupe thread up on top because I want it to blend with the fabric. All right, here we go. Okay, so that's exactly what I wanted it to do. All right, so now I'm going to switch the thread up in the top of the machine to the green that I want to use to go with my green fabric there. And we're going to do the exact same thing on this side. Okay, so we've got 2 blocks done, and now we're working on block number 3. How about that? Isn't that cool? All right, so let's go ahead and stitch out the placement line for the batting. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to lay the batting down. Make sure I've got all ends covered. There we go. And let's put the foot down and let's tack down the batting. Okay, so now I want you to take the hoop off the machine, go to a table, and we're going to trim away the excess batting from the outside so it's not in our seam allowance. We've got the batting all trimmed up nicely, so let's go ahead and just stitch out the placement line. Even though we're not really going to use it, we'll just go ahead and stitch it out. Here we go. Okay, so there's a tack down stitch here. I'm going to skip it because the fabric is not wide enough to even be tacked down anyway, so I'm going to use the down arrow, skip it so it goes to the quilting, and then we're back to the machine. So I'm just going to lay the fabric down on top of the batting, and I'm going to hold it down with my stylus, and we're going to quilt it just like we did this one. Okay, here we go. Very nice. Okay, that worked. So now I want you to take the hoop off your machine, and then we're going to go ahead and take the blocks out of the hoop and set them aside, and we're going to work on the next 2 blocks. Again, we'll trim all these up at the very end of the video. All right, let's get ready to do the last 2 blocks. Okay, check our bobbin. We still got plenty of thread down below. I have got my large 8 by 12 inch hoop for these next 2 blocks, and I have put another piece of the poly no-show mesh stabilizer in it. Let's go to the screen cam and let's load the next design. So first of all, we're finished with a happy face. Yay! Click OK. Easiest way to clear the memory is to go home. OK to delete. Yes. Go back to embroidery. Go back to my flash drive. Quilting Through the Seasons. And my quilting designs. And these are going to be floral. And I'm looking for something that will work with a 1 by 10 design, which there's not a 1 by 10, but there's a 2 by 10. So I'm going to pick the 2 by 10. The cool thing with this is almost all the quilting will show. It'll show this way, but we'll cut off a little bit on the left and right sides when we square this up. But it's not a big deal. We're still going to get a lot of good quilting on that side. It is a 10.5 by 2.5, so you got to make sure you have your 8 by 12 inch hoop in here in order for this to fit. And now I can move this over to the left a little bit, and now I'm going to click add. I'm going to go back to my flash drive, Quilting Through the Seasons, Quilting Designs, Floral, and I want to pick another one. Because we're doing filler block 1 and 2, they're both identical. So I want to pick that 2 by 10 again. Click set. And then I'm going to bring it over to the right with my stylus. So I've got plenty of room. It's a little higher, so I want to try to get them level there. And everything looks good. Let's click embroidery. The machine loves it. The hoop size is right. And we are ready to go. All right. Okay, so let's go back to the hoop cam. Perfect. And the fabrics you're going to need for these 2 blocks are this green and a gray right here. You need these 2 blocks. So let's go ahead and get that. And I'm going to work on the green first because I already have the green thread up in the top of the machine from the last block. So with that thread up there on top, I'm going to put the foot down and stitch out the placement line for the first block. Here we go. Okay, so I have another scrap piece of batting. Let's see if it's going to fit. Ooh, yes, it will. All right. Nice. Actually, I'm going to flip it up and use this side because the block, there we go, is going to be more on the top. Again, this is one of the blocks that will stitch the whole thing, but will actually be trimmed up shorter and a little bit more narrow. So it doesn't have to be perfect, okay? So let's go ahead and got the batting down. Let's put our foot down and tack it down. Here we go. Okay, you know what we're going to do. We're going to take the hoop off the machine, take it to a table, and let's trim away the excess batting. Okay, we've got the batting trimmed up all right. Now let's go to the screen because we're going to skip the next stitch. The next stitch is just a placement line for the fabric, and we don't need that because the fabric is smaller than that anyway, so I'm going to go forward one. And we're going to skip this one too because this is a tack down for the fabric. And again, the fabric is not wide enough. So we're going to skip that step as well and go straight to the fun part, which is the quilting. Okay, let's go back to the hoop cam. Okay, so now I'm going to place the fabric down on top. And I got a couple creases down here. I'll just press that out when I'm all done. It was pressed and it got smushed, but it'll be okay. I'll just make sure that it lies flat and then I'll press it when it's done. So let's put the foot down and let's stitch out the quilting. Just make sure that when the foot moves, it doesn't catch the end. If it does, stop the machine and put the fabric back down. So you're just kind of making sure it doesn't catch the edges as it quilts, because there's nothing to stop the foot from accidentally grabbing it as it goes over. All right, so let's do the quilting. It's a 2-minute in real life stitch out. Here we go. Nice. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing on the right hand side. We're going to put the dark gray thread up at the top of your machine because we want that to blend in with this dark gray fabric that we're going to be using on this block. And you got this. You got the rhythm, you're getting good, and you know what to do now, all right? Cool. So let's do the placement line for this second block. Here we go. Okay, now we're going to put the batting down, making sure you've covered all sides. And let's tack that down. Foot down, same color thread up on top. You got this. You know what to do next. Let's take the hoop off the machine and let's take it to the table and let's trim away the excess batting from outside of those lines, okay? Okay, that looks all good and trimmed up. So let's go to the screen cam and we're going to skip the next step. So I want to do plus or minus. That's a placement line for the fabric. We don't need that because the fabric's not large enough. So let's skip that one. And that's a tack down for the same fabric. We're going to skip that one too and go right to the quilting. All right, so let's go back to the hoop cam and let's place the fabric down on the batting. Do the same as you did for the one on the left. You want it just to position and cover that batting. And the cool thing with the batting is it actually helps keep the fabric down. The only thing you really got to worry about is to make sure the foot does not get stuck under that piece of fabric. Okay, so all we have to do now is quilt out this side. You ready? Put the foot down and let's go. Very nice. Okay, so we're done with this block. So let's take the hoop off the machine. That looks great. And let's take this to the table along with the other 3 blocks that we finished earlier. And I'm going to show you how to trim all these blocks up. All right, look at all these blocks that you stitched out. You did a great job. We got 5 of them done today. Now I want you to put them in this order. Whereas this is block number 1 and 2. These are the longer of the 2 blocks. Then we have the square, that's number 3. And then beige 4 and greens number 5. All right, so put them in that order. And this is the order that we're going to trim them up. Okay, so I'm going to put the first 2 aside. We're going to work on filler block 1 and 2. And I've gone ahead and marked my stabilizer with the size that we need to square these up to. So you can do the same to yours. Each one of these 2 is going to be squared to 8.5 inches by 1.5 inches. That's 8.5 by 1.5. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is I want to trim up some of this excess stabilizer so I have something a little bit more manageable to deal with. So I'm going to cut that off there, and I'm going to go ahead and cut this off here since I know my size. Okay, keep that size handy so I can double check it. And then I'm going to separate these 2. Okay, right down the middle. Okay, that'll give me something a little bit easier to deal with. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to square up this one end here. Line her up. Use your mat. I just want to trim off the extra and right on the end and the batting. Okay, it gets that gone, and then I have a straight edge to deal with. Okay, so now I want to do the length here first, which is going to be 8.5 inches, because I know this block is going to have to be cut down, and I want to try to save as much of the quilting as I can. So 8.5 inches, I've lined it up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.5. Double check. Yep, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.5. All right, so I can see that I'm going to cut off part of the quilting on this side. That's fine. That's part of the plan. So I lined it up so it'll be perfect. 8.5 inches. Okay. Bye-bye quilting. All right, so that is the easy part. The next part's a little bit more difficult because this block right now measures 2 inches across, and we have to cut it down to 1.5 inches, which means some of the quilting is going to disappear. So I want to kind of look at the block and say, which side do I want to keep and which side can I cut off? Well, this side has more flowers to it. This side only has 1. So I think I'm going to turn it around. And this is going to be the side that I end up cutting off. So let me go back around, and I just want to trim up this edge, because this is the edge I decided I want to keep that has the 2 flowers. I want to trim this edge up nicely so that it's clean and I get rid of that excess batting. Okay, so that's now the clean side. And don't worry, because some of this quilting is going to end up in your seam allowance as well. It's basically up to personal preference as to which side you want to cut off. It's not a big deal. You just do what you like, okay? So now this is going to be 1.5 inches. So I'm going to use my ruler. 1.5. Double check, 1.5. That's where I need to go. So this part is where I'm going to trim. Okay. And there is filler block number 1. Isn't that pretty? You get a close-up view. There you go. So put that one aside. We want to do the exact same thing on this one. So I'm going to go ahead and trim up the side that has the 2 flowers next to the edge. That, by the way, will also end up in the seam allowance, but it seems to have more quilting along that side. Again, personal preference. It's totally what you want. Oops, and I need a new blade. But in reality, the quilt block is still quilted nicely, so it's really not going to matter that much what ends up in the seam allowance and what doesn't. I forgot to trim my edges. Let's do that first. This one needs to be just trimmed up there, but I want to definitely do this before I do the last cut on this side. So now this is going to be 8.5 inches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.5. Triple check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.5. Make sure I'm lined up. Okay, that part's going to go. And now we're going to go to 1.5. And I've already cleaned up that edge. So now I'm going to come over here and line it up 1.5. 1.5, and trim that up. Oops. There we go. All right. So that is a very nicely quilted block. Can you see that there? Cool. All right. So we've got those 2 done. Not so bad, huh? This one will be pretty easy. This one's going to be squared up to 4.5 inches by 4.5 inches. And if I look at my ruler here and I look at this outer stitch line right here, the one that we use to tack down this fabric, let's see what that measures. Look at that. From here to here is 4.5, and from here to here is 4.5. So this one is going to be a very easy square up. I'm going to go right on that stitch line, and I'm going to take care of that one side, and I'm going to turn it around, and I'm going to make sure that this equals 4.5. 1, 2, 3, 4.5. Make sure I'm lined up nicely. All right, and I am right above that stitch line. So I know that is correct, and that's where I want to cut. Do the same thing over here. Go to that stitch line. Make sure you're on top of it. Trim that up. And then I'm going to come over here, and that's lined up nicely there. 1, 2, 3, 4.5. And the stitch line is just under the edge of the ruler, which is where I want to be. So I trim that up. Dun, 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 dun. You have another block squared up. Love that quilting. That is so cool. All right, stick that there. We've got 2 to do. So again, I'm going to just trim up the excess stabilizer and get that out of the way so that it's a little bit easier to deal with. Okay, and these blocks are going to measure 1.5 inches by 4.5 inches. 1.5 by 4.5. So I'm going to cut this in the middle. Move that one aside. 1.5 by 4.5. So what do I want to do first? First thing I want to do is I want to trim up this edge, not the batting side edge, this fabric edge, and clean that up so I have a nice edge on this side to deal with. All right, so that's done. So it's going to be, again, 1.5 by 4.5. So this is 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.5. And you measure again. 1, 2, 3, 4.5. I'm right where I want to be, and I'm going to cut that off. Bye-bye quilting. All right, so we're good on that one, and then this one's going to be 1.5. So which side do I want to keep? I think I want to keep this side. Again, there's seem to be more flowers on the one side, even though part of it will be in the seam allowance. That's okay. Now I can measure this to 1.5 inches. Take my ruler, 1.5, 1.5. All right, bye-bye quilting. That hurts, but it's okay. You've got this cute little block that still has a lot of cool quilting on it. See that? Okay, so let's put that one there. We only have one more to do. Same thing. Let's trim up this top edge, which I want to be my good edge. Okay. And so now I'm going to trim this to 4.5, right? Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4.5. Make sure I'm on my edge. Double check. 1, 2, 3, 4.5. And trim the block off that way. And now I'm going to use this side. So I want to just trim this up. And now we're going to go 1.5 inches this way. 1.5. Take my ruler, do the same thing. 1.5. Over just a smidgy. 1.5. And trim. Dun, 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 dun. You did it! And there's the green block. Isn't that cool? All right, so you have now stitched out the first 5 filler blocks in this project. Isn't that great? Look what you did. Not too hard, huh? It's just a matter of going through each one, choosing what quilting that you want to cut off and what you want to keep, and making sure you get the filler blocks the right size. You got this. You did it. Congratulations. I hope you had as much fun making these filler blocks number 1 through 5 as I did, and I hope you stay tuned here on Jolly Molly TV for more fun and more blocks in Kimberbell's Quilting Through the Seasons ladder quilt project. And until I see you next time, take care and happy stitching. Bye-bye.